It is the command of my queen that I deliver her gift personally to Caesar, alone.
That rug seems harmless enough.
No, Caesar.
But you can lend me your sword, Rufio. May require some cutting. Odd way to carry a rug. Wouldn't it be easier to sling it over your shoulder?
Was less comfortable that way.
For you or the rug?
That sword, Caesar. The rug is such a delicate weave.
I find one can tell more about the quality of merchandise by examining the backside first.
All hail Cleopatra, kindred of Horus and Ra, beloved of the moon and sun, daughter to Isis, and of Upper and Lower Egypt, queen.
Thank you.
The first freeze frame goes to when Cleopatra first met Caesar. Their first meeting is a bit ambiguous as time has mixed the myths with the truth. The facts are that Cleopatra hid herself in a sack to sneak into her own home so that her brother would not be able to catch her trying to meet with Caesar. It was this amazing first meeting that surprised Julius Caesar and sparked his interest in this mysterious and captivating 21-year-old woman. Their relationship was extremely significant because it allowed Cleopatra VII to reestablish herself into the Egyptian kingdom, of which she was exiled by her 13-year-old brother/husband after his advisors convinced him to, as joint ruler with Ptolemy, her brother. This was one of the life-changing moments in Cleopatra's life because it is her first relationship, as she spent most of her life in hiding. It was also very important because it allowed her to later become sole ruler of Egypt after her brother attempted to murder Caesar, and eventually the wealthiest, most powerful woman in the ancient world. It is said that Cleopatra led to the downfall of Caesar's control of the Roman Empire and that she had bewitched him over the 6 months they spent trapped together in a palace. Regardless of the validity of behind that idea, Cleopatra's relationship with Caesar secured her livelihood, guaranteed her control of Egypt, gave her Caesarion, her son, named Little Caesar, and allowed her to meet Mark Antony. When Stacey Schiff discusses Cleopatra and Caesar's first encounter, she says, "The jolt was that generated when, in a singular shuddering moment, two civilizations passing in different directions, unexpectedly and momentously touch."
A son shall be born to Isis.
Schiff proves their relationship was important when she says, "No one single act could have secured her future better than bearing Julius Caesar's child."
How unafraid he is.
The second freeze frame goes to the time in Cleopatra's life when she seduced Mark Antony.
I have a fondness for almost all Greek things.
As in almost all Greek things.
In the following picture, we see Mark Antony doting on Cleopatra. After the Roman Civil War, the Roman Empire was divided into the hands of two men, Octavian, Caesar Augustus, and Mark Antony. Conveniently, after the land was divided and Mark Antony received control of the eastern part of the empire, Cleopatra began to call for Mark Antony's attention. Cleopatra and Mark Antony's relationship started as a business ordeal. Cleopatra wanted to have a say in everything and anything Mark Antony wanted to do in the East, while Mark Antony wanted Cleopatra's money to enlarge his eastern territory. To assure that Cleopatra's rule would be permanent, Cleopatra seduced Mark Antony through lavish parties, eloquent speaking, and her charming personality. After bedazzling Mark Antony in Tarsus, Antony fell in love with her and complied to her every wish, which allowed her to maintain her reign over Egypt and to remove any enemies that might have surrounded her. Later, after Antony dispatched his army for the winter and tired of military affairs, he headed south to join Cleopatra in Egypt. When Antony stayed with Cleopatra for a long period of time, he left his wife, Fulvia, Octavian's sister, to die and helped Cleopatra maintain control of the Egyptian people through his charm and their combined infamy. Cleopatra's seduction was a benchmark in Cleopatra's life for 4 reasons. First, it ensured her power as sole ruler of Egypt. Second, it allowed her to kill all enemies and ensure a future for her children. Third, It allowed her to amass a large Eastern empire with Mark Antony. Fourth, she ended up staying with Mark Antony for the rest of her life. Schiff points out that Cleopatra's seduction is significant because it's unique for her era and marks her in history as a seductress. She says, "In the ancient world, 2 women schemed while men strategized. The consort of 2 men of voracious sexual appetite and innumerable sexual conquests. Cleopatra would go down in history as the snare, the delusion, the seductress."
No! There! There is Egypt!
The third and final freeze frame goes to when Cleopatra loses to Octavian. Here we have Cleopatra and Augustus Caesar or Octavian standing next to each other, and Cleopatra is looking defeated. When the final war of the Roman Republic began, after Octavian declared war on Cleopatra, Mark Antony betrayed the Roman government to join Cleopatra. After being defeated, Cleopatra and Mark Antony returned home to ultimately die. Their retreat was significant in Cleopatra's life because it is when she begins to lose control of Egypt. It causes Cleopatra to go on a killing frenzy once she was back in Alexandria, and to steal money from all the places she possibly could so that she could go to India and potentially escape Octavian's hold. Originally, Cleopatra wanted her son to rule Egypt. Octavian agreed if she agreed to one condition in return: assassinate Antony. Antony, having heard of this, had a counteroffer. He would commit suicide so that Cleopatra could be saved. Caesar wanted nothing to do with this. So in her downtime, Cleopatra attempted to find a poison that would kill her in a painless way, just in case the situation ever called for it. After Mark Antony went to a final battle, which Cleopatra asked him not to go to, and lost, Cleopatra asked a messenger to go tell Antony that she had died. The defeat was significant mostly, however, because it ultimately leads to both her suicide as well as Mark Antony's and her son's eventual death from Caesar's murder. Shortly after, Mark Antony tried to kill himself but failed. Cleopatra passed just as he was dying, and he realized she hadn't died yet. Antony ended up dying in her arms. Octavian came just as this happened and wanted her alive. They took away anything that could have allowed her to kill herself. The longer Octavian kept her prisoner and told her that he refused to allow her 2 children to rule Egypt, the more she wanted to die. One of her servants ultimately helped her to do so. Cleopatra's defeat led to 3 significant and final events in her life. 1, her loss of complete reign over Egypt. 2, her loss of friends and admirers around the world. And 3, the loss of her life, Antony's life, her son's life, and the Ptolemaic reign of Egypt. Schiff argued that Cleopatra's defeat by Octavian had significant impacts for her. She said, "Octavian had declared war on her alone. She had every reason to demand vengeance. She had been shunted aside by military advisors before to wind up in the Sinai desert, homeless and disenfranchised. She had been ill-served by intermediaries. She may have been willing to entrust Egypt's fate to Antony alone. All was at stake. The future of the Ptolemaic dynasty hung in the balance. Were Octavian and Antony to come to terms now, she would be the price of the accord."
Show me the way!
There is too much unsaid within me that I cannot say.
And I cannot know it.
There is much unsaid within you, too.
That is probably true of everybody.
Stay for a while. I've known you so long, but
So little. Give me time.
Not I. Not Egypt and Rome together. Not even the gods have time to give you.